Hello, everybody. So my name is Dr. Abiola Fasina-Ayoola. I'm an emergency and critical care physician from Nigeria, and I'm going to be moderating this session today on advocacy and the development of emergency medicine around the globe. We have four amazing speakers, one of whom is online. And each speaker is going to speak for 20 minutes and give us a little bit of a taste of what they've been doing in their respective countries. We're going to hold questions until the end, just to make sure that everybody has a chance to finish what they have to say. But please keep your questions in hand so that we can have a very robust discussion at the end. We have a few minutes at the end for that. So without further ado, we're going to start with Hamdan Hilan. I really hope I said your name well. He's going to be talking to us about from chaos to coordination, Libya's journey to building a national pre-hospital emergency system. So this is going to be very interesting because so much has happened in Libya recently. We're really excited to hear about what you're doing to sort of organize that chaos in your country. So over to you, Dr. Hilan. Thank you. Could you unmute yourself? You are muted and we can hear you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah. Before I begin, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine a major flood, hundreds of injured, entire neighbor isolated, and a city where ambulances do not operate under one system, where response have no unified protocol, and where there is no national pre-hospital emergency framework. This is what not a simulation. This was Libya. And for us, emergency medicine was never just about medicine. It became about survival, leadership, and building system from almost nothing. My name is Hamdan Hilan, and today I want to share with you how a fragile system began transforming chaos into coordination. The reality. In 2018, Libya EMS system was deeply fragmented. Different ambulance providers, different ministries, different level of training, and in many cases, no training at all. There was no national EMS governance, no unified dispatch system, no standardized pre-hospital curriculum, no operational SOPs. So during emergencies, responders relied heavily on improvisation rather than system. And the problem with improvisation is that people eventually pay for it with time, resources, and sometimes with lives. But crises also reveal opportunities. And in Libya, they forced us to ask a difficult question. If no system exists, can we build one ourselves? Why this is matter? Libya is a country exposed to multiple layers of instability, conflicts, floods, displacement, infrastructure collapse, and resources limitation. But the most dangerous thing was not only the disaster themselves. It was the absence of coordination before disasters happened, because emergency medicine does not begin in the emergency department. It begins in streets, in the ambulance, in the first 5 minutes. And if those first minutes fail, everything after become harder. My leadership journey actually began long before medicine. I was scout, a volunteer, a student organizer. At that time, I didn't realize those experiences were building something inside me. Leadership, adaptability, communication, problem solving. I call this your inventory. Every challenge you experience in life become part of inventory you later use in moments of crisis. So when I entered emergency medicine, I realized something very important. we were not only lacking ambulance, we are lacking systems, training, coordination, vision. And I understood that if we wanted change, someone had to begin building the initiative. So, through the Emergency Medicine and Support Center, together with the Ministry of Health in Libya and collaboration with international organizations, we launched a national initiative, not just to train people, but to create structure. Because training without system create isolated individual, but training with system create national capacity. Our goal become clear. Build unified EMS standards, develop operational SOPs, create sustainable educational pathways, align with WHO EMT standard, prepare Libya for future national EMT classification. One of our first priority was workforce development. We trained over 400 frontline responders across multiple regions in emergency medicine, disaster response, critical care, simulation, mass casualty management. But more importantly, we trained them to think in system. Because protocols are not papers. Protocols are shared language during chaos. In fragile setting, capacity building is not optional. It's survival. For the first time in Libya, we began drafting unified national SOPs for pre-hospital emergency care. And that changed something psychologically. Because suddenly responders from different city, different institution, different background, we were speaking the same operational language. That's how system began. Not with building, but with shared understanding. EMT Libya vision. As the EMT Libya focal point, my current role focusing on helping guide the national effort toward WHO EMT classification. And this is important for us because it changed the mindset of the country. It moves us from reactive emergency response to organized preparedness. Our dream is not only to respond to Libya crisis, but only one day to stand beside international EMT teams globally. Today, we are still early in the journey, but we already see signs of transformation, stronger coordination, harmonized guidance, trained responders, a growing national EMS identity. And perhaps most importantly, people now believe improvement is possible. In post-conflict environment, hope itself becomes infrastructure. So, what did Libya teach us? First, leadership often began before resource exists. Second, we do not wait for perfect system to start improving system. Third, international standards become powerful when adopted locally. And finally, young professionals can become system builders if they are trusted early. I want to end with this. In fragile setting, chaos is everywhere. But chaos is not the end of story, because leadership is the ability to enter disorder and slowly create coordination. Libya still has a long road ahead, but today, for the first time, we are building not only emergency response, but emergency medicine identity. Yours.
Right. Thank you very much, Hamlin. We actually have a bit of time. You were really very efficient, and we still have about 10 minutes of your time left. So I'm actually going to open the floor for questions if there's anybody who has Any questions for Hamdan, Hilan now? Just to put this in context, Libya is 7.54 million people. I think that's about right.
Yeah.
70% of them live in urban areas. It's post-conflict, as we all know. And so the structure that he's building around trying to create a pre-hospital care system is truly remarkable because he's building it from scratch. There's nothing there after some of the conflict that has happened. I think there's a lot we can learn from him around some of the areas of the world where we are trying to put together pre-hospital care systems and we don't have a lot of resources. Any questions in the crowd or online for our first speaker in this session? Please introduce yourself first.
My name is James. I'm an emergency doctor from Australia. Congratulations. That sounds like you're doing amazing work down there in Libya. I'm curious about when you're dealing with multiple different agencies or private organisations providing pre-hospital care, what resistance did you did you get to this approach, and how did you negotiate that?
Yeah, the obstacle was the fragmentation. Yes, as you said, there's many of institution, many of companies or private or public working pre-hospital. So the difficulty was there is no operational language. There's no unified system or protocol. So that's why the first step is building capacity, even with low resources sitting, the building capacity and to advocacy about how to dealing, how to create, how to make everyone is useful in this cycle. No exclusion. This is the harmony of making everyone is one part of this cycle. So this is the unique, or how to manage with this different identity or different provider. So the building capacity is the key, and make everyone is involvement with this. No exclusion.
Any other questions? We still have about 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Nuran and I'm a nurse from Germany. My question is pretty basic, like how did you start? Also, it was your own idea? Did you start alone, or was it like a group in the hospital where you worked? And because in my imagination I can't wrap my head around it, when you be in a position like that and in a state like that, post-conflict, we know what is happening in Libya. How did you start?
Yeah. My status was as emergency physician in my city, which is facing a lot of crisis. So I was training the nurses in my hospital. This is the first. Then we expand this training cycle or this training program to involve multiple of doctors to be focal points in their cities with the emergency medicine and support center, which is my center is working as an EMT focal point in it, and is responsible for response to any crisis in multiple region or different region in Libya. So this is the very beginning, starting as training emergency physician in different cities to be a focal point if there is any crisis, and then expanding this focal points to involve more and more pre-hospital care provider with the emergency medicine support center.
We have time for one more question.
Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. My name is Mosh. I'm a ED physician from Australia, but I'm Nigerian. So I can understand some of the challenges of, developing this kind of services in Africa. Some of the questions you've answered, I want to understand, two key aspects of how you're able to develop the services. One is how were you able to engage politicians and government, to support the establishment of the EMT services you provided. And then the second is, in terms of how were you able to provide the education? Was it that you were needed to upskill people to be able to deliver these services, or you have external, participants help you to provide this?
Sure. Let me to build this together. So the starting, we have a lot of crisis, a lot of in the moment needing for response. So this is our approach. When there is a crisis, the training is beginning. It's not officially or not the way to go, but this is what happened. The training was and the structure was a lesson learned from a crisis itself. So that is the make this approach is unique. First of all, then you can build documents about it, or SOPs, or lesson learned from the crisis 1 to how to make more official in the crisis 2, and so on. And the number, the statistics from the improvement from crisis 1 to crisis 2, the crisis 3, and so on, that's make the governance and politician see you and answering your call for making a structure to adapting your approach, to adapting your system. So that's the whole story in short. So in crisis, you need to respond, but you need to respond in the way you can make it improvement in the next step. So that's our story in Libya, and the change, or the change maker, was the Darna floods. It's thousands of people was tragedy in this crisis, and we have changing a lot of our pre-hospital care, pre-hospital system, response team, and as a lesson learned from this crisis.
Thank you so much, Hamdan, for your time, and good luck. Keep going in Libya. We wish you very much the best of luck. It's hard work. Well done. So we're going to take our next speaker now, Dr. Kaushila Thilakasiri, who's going to be coming up to speak to us now a little bit about her work on decolonizing global emergency medical education. Welcome.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, thank you. Right. So, yes, I don't have any conflicts of interest, but I'm a big fan of my country and my association. So we have our conference, which I do advertise a bit. Decolonizing global emergency medical education is the topic that I'm talking to you today. This talk is aligned to know it, spot it, and then do it. So let's see what decolonizing medical education, or let's know it. So colonialism is a concept where, in its ancient context, it was I enter your country and I tell that, on majesty of this person, I own your land and you work as I say. But neocolonialism is much more different. It is structural, it is embedded, it is subtle. You comply, but it is almost the same context. So both of these entities, people have tried to change and decolonize. However, what has not changed is the perspective of moving from perspective of helping another country versus becoming a partner, supporting. So the supporting or helping mentality versus partnering. So this is what decolonization is. You partner with another LMIC, I don't like calling it low resource. I like to call it resource denied situations. So, right. Why do we need to decolonize global emergency medical education? Because it hinders not only the sustainability and improvement of global emergency care in the LMICs or in the less resource setting, it also hinders the development of medical education globally, even in the high income, because we perceive as the knowledge flow, the flow should be from north to south, or the flow should be from high resource to low resource, whereas it should be bilateral. And not realizing this is a problem. Why? Because I've worked in the UK for 2.5 years and then returned back to Sri Lanka. When I was working in the UK, I honestly felt that they're not making the most out of me. Under the impression that, we need to train you, we need to give you. And then I took up a fellowship where I was a multidisciplinary SIM fellow, and I'm very, very thankful to Oxford for doing this for me. So they trained me, and they took the benefit of me, because I was able to deliver a new project in my emergency department to do in situ simulation on a weekly basis in a setup where in the past many have tried to set it up but could not set it up. So this was sustaining even after I left. So this was a classic example where the learning is bilateral, where the partnership is there. So that is what know it, and now we'll look at spotting it. So I was very lucky to be a co-author of this paper, where we developed a toolkit, and few authors are already here in the audience as well. A toolkit for decolonizing global emergency medicine education, where it was developed through a peer group discussions, and it has its own flaws, it has its own strengths. So this is what I'm primarily basing my talk today, which is, it is divided into 5 themes: access, awareness of cultural humanity, language, representation, and recognition. So access, this is IFEM Academy. So when we talk about access, yes, paywall is one point of access, but do we think about, can an LMIC use an online platform? Do they have enough internet? So access is beyond just money. Think more, think from the other person's shoes. And also, let them think, not, and also this concept of us and them is also a bit, dichotomous, but it does not exist in that way. It's a bit more fluid. And the other thing is awareness of cultural humanity. It is important to get out of this white man's burden of civilization or taking to progress. The cultural awareness is understanding what is grounded in the culture when someone else goes to a different culture and try to do an education program. Same for me. When I went to England and started an education program, I need to accept their culture. I need to accept the culture there, because, say for example, Britons are less direct, and when they say, I will think about it, that means nothing's going to happen. But I thought, actually, they're going to think about it. So understanding similarly, when you do come for a training program or decide to go for your global emergency medical education programs, think about what the language, their culture means. So language. This is a Sri Lankan who won the Booker Prize a few years ago. Language does not mean that the other person just does not speak that language. It is something beyond that. The top image is a 2,500 years old medical book from my country. My country has a 2,500 years of written history. So when you do talk about global emergency medical education, know that there is a language existing in that other culture. As much as we are expected to do IELTS and prove our ability to speak English when we go to England, you need to prove your ability to converse with a Sri Lankan. Because when I was working in one of the departments, I had a colleague who's come from Australia. Most of our doctors were spending time trying to translate patients to him while doing their clinical work. So it was a burden, and we were running away from this guy because we actually liked working with him, but it was consuming a lot of time. So these are things that we really don't look into. And it means, when we mean partnering, that is what we mean. And then representation. So in situ simulation designed for what is below may not be adaptable when you do it in above setting. So remember whether the design that you're making is representing what their reality or what my reality is or your reality is. So this is another paper which I co-authored with few others who are also here today. And this is about recognition. We noted that 75% of LMIC emergency medicine publications have a high-income author as the important authors, first author or the last author. And the LMIC representation is not recognized equally. Those who pay are recognized. Those who cannot pay are less recognized. This is proven. So giving appropriate recognition is part of decolonizing medical education. Okay, so what do we do? Now we know it, now we've spotted it, or we know how to spot it. So access, bidirectional, empower LMIC colleagues, generate context-specific content. If your resuscitation course has avalanche burial and you're coming to Sri Lanka with that course, think about it. We have snake bite and cardiac arrest. We've never heard avalanche burials. And then improve access to research findings among LMIC. I have so many papers which I cannot access, my own papers which I cannot access. Free or low cost quality medical education available for all learners offline. And then work to create feedback mechanisms and space for critical reflection to allow all stakeholders. Awareness, cultural humility, prepare for work. Know where you're going. The locals know it best. Even though you prepared something, be ready to change. Prioritization led by the LMIC. Yes, you know, but you need to find the priorities that are locally relevant. Using language to break power structure. As much as I talked about, knowing the language of that country, it is important to remember words like developing nations, third world. These are words. These are very powerful words, and they do undermine. So remember. Availability of translation support both in home and country and abroad, select choice of language as shared decisions, and research community supporting interpretation and translation services. Institutions encourage foreign placement should provide language learning opportunity. Then representation. Prevent white saviorism. I talked about white saviorism and aid. Share experience in international forums despite country of origin. So most of the time when we do come from an LMIC, the platforms that we get to talk about is about LMIC. While my research might be on simulation, my research might be on resuscitation, I'm not given that equal opportunity to speak about resuscitation. But I'm invited to talk about, tropical medicine. Local collaborative perspectives and priorities are considered throughout research, educational projects. Immigrants and people of color included in case discussion unrelated to ethnicity. So usually it's travel-related medicine case. You would use people of color. But we are all human. We all get the same diseases. So be mindful about it. And then recognize, develop researchers in LMIC, not research. You develop researchers. That is more powerful. Research authorship, due recognition. Research grants for LMIC partners from LMIC research. So grants are very, very few. That does not come with a high-income researcher tag. So encouraged. But there are grants, and there are organizations like ICEM. I've had ICEM grants. I've had ICEM grants. So there are grants there, and we need more. Okay, so I'm open for questions.
Thank you. We've got 10 minutes of your time left to take some questions. And just to put things in context, Dr. Thilakasiri is the National Simulation Center Clinical Lead for Colombo East-based hospital, and she's also the General Secretary of the Sri Lankan College of Emergency Physicians. So she has some authority to make some change, and we should definitely engage her. Any questions for her from her talk? We've got 8 minutes or so and can take one or two.
Maybe I'll ask you a question then.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the excellent presentation, and I think many of it will resonate. As someone who also trained in England for almost 20-something years now, there's that approach that before people see your ability, they see your color, and sometimes you are kind of relegated down, and you have to fight to move up the ladder and convince people to be able to have trust in you. But beyond that, I'm thinking more in terms of the South looking up to the North, but more of a South-South collaboration, and the South-South building more structures that are grounded, whether it's research, whether it's exchanging ideas, where we move from consuming to actually producing research. Because one area which I think I talk about when I have the opportunity is we often will take research that's been done outside our settings with a very different demographics, and we'll try to use those research findings to manage our subsets of population, where I believe we need to move to where some of the research are good, but we need to validate them with our own populations and actually see whether it works. The other area is, the fundings that tend to come. I think it's about time for our leadership in the South to stop looking towards, waiting for fundings to come from the North, so that we can utilize more of our own money to look after our own people. Like Africa is more than tuberculosis, is more than HIV, is more than malaria, is more than maternity. There's so many things happening. But this is the main areas where you see money being pumped to. And like it was presented this morning, actually how much of, a dollar actually gets to the patient who might be suffering this. So this is the area which I believe, your presentation kind of shed light on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Thank you, Doctor. I think you're giving us a lot of food for thought. I think during our discussion, what Doki is trying to really help us think about is agenda setting. Who's at the table making decisions about priority? Who gets to sit at the table? Who decides where the money is going? And who decides what's important? It's not just for simulation, but it's a conversation that is galvanizing all of us in the global South, particularly in this environment, about how we are going to direct our care and really take more ownership of it. So we should keep that in mind for discussion later as we start to talk about strategies for doing that, and also breaking down silos between countries, which are artificial anyway. They're all relics of colonialism anyway. So we can get rid of them if we can. All right, thank you so much. So we have our next speaker coming up. And we have Dr. Sian Geraty. She's an EM specialist and head of a tertiary emergency department in Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa. Apologies for, are you okay from yesterday's match? Okay. And she's managing a postgraduate EM specialist program. She's the deputy associate editor for the Journal of the Colleges of Medicine of South Africa. And so she'll be giving us a talk today about life in the slow lane. So we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Abiola. Morning, everyone. Why do we like the pit? It's not just the medicine, right? I I feel like when I watch the pit, I feel like I'm seen. When I was preparing to come to Germany for an emergency medicine conference, I caught up on Berlin ER, or De Krank. I'm surprised at how few people have watched it. The medicine is not amazing, but the busyness and the angst and the feeling of overwhelm was very, very, very much something I could identify with. As Abiola said, my name's Sian. I am an emergency medicine specialist. I work in the poorest province of South Africa. I also work in the murder capital of our country. So it is difficult. It is busy. Similar to all over the world, our patient numbers are rising. The acuity of our patients is getting higher and higher. Our patients are more and more elderly. Our left without being seen rates are going higher. And we respond by working faster, harder, better and stronger. We're a stereotype. We caffeinate, we keep on pushing, trying to see the next sick patient and the next one behind them, and we keep on going. When's the last time someone asked you, how are you doing? You said, I'm fine, I'm just busy. My social media feed tells me that we're the most unhappy speciality. I don't know if we're the most unhappy, but we are definitely the most burnt out, as David Carr said yesterday. Depending on which study you read, we're between 25% and 77% burnt out as EM specialists. Apparently 26% of EM nurses, but I suspect that number is far higher. A South African study a few years ago, I was a participant, and we spoke about our experiences of emergency medicine being chaotic, being a battlefield, not having the resources that we need to do what we need to be able to do to help our patients, that we're set up to fail, and that we're working in a war zone. We are, in the words of Dr. Victoria Sweet, and I'm going to come back to her just now, oppressed, suppressed, repressed, and depressed. We did a stroke simulation some years back. We had an actress. It was very well done. The team rushed the patient in. It was a hyperacute stroke. We needed to get her through the CT scan and do a thrombolytic checklist, and the team did everything well. In the debrief afterwards, the actress, who happened to be a doctor, said that no one asked her name. Nobody connected with her. They were so busy trying to rush through the protocol. A few weeks ago, one of the doctors in our emergency department was busy with a stab heart. A different patient, another patient who was busy with polytrauma, and this patient, the one whose x-ray is shown here, came in very stable, or a patient similar to this. He'd been assaulted in his abdomen. He wanted to open a case against his assailant, and the doctor took one look at this x-ray, called it normal, and discharged the patient home. He was busy. Different case. What's the first thing you see? Right, does everyone see the occlusion myocardial infarction? What's the second thing you see? You see the AV block? Okay, that took you an extra minute or two to have a look to see where the P waves are, think about the bradycardia. So Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics, talks about System 1 and System 2 thinking. System 1 made you see the OMI, right? It was looking at that ST segment elevation. It was pattern recognition. It was fast, almost involuntary. However, to pay attention to the AV block, we needed to slow down. We needed to use our System 2 thinking. But I'm an expert. I'm not going to miss the free air under the diaphragm. I'm certainly not going to miss the STEMI, and I'm certainly not going to miss the third degree AV block, right? Maybe not. Moulton says that circumstances such as burnout, disillusionment and complacency, these things sound familiar, right, can actually cause experts to lose our expertise. So, we are burnt out, we're not connecting with our patients, and we are even potentially starting to lose our expertise because of how hard and how fast we are working. Is there potentially a little bit of balance? In the 1980s, McDonald's moved to a small town in Italy. In rebellion, the slow food movement was born. Food that is made with quality, fresh ingredients, there's time together, time taken to prepare, and that movement has led to the slow living movement, slow productivity, a fantastic book and one of my favorites, slow travel, and even slow medicine. In this amazing book, Dr. Victoria Sweet calls slow medicine a way of seeing, being, and doing. The family physicians talk about slow medicine being medicine that has time to do what you need to do. It's equitable, it's measured, it takes the patient into consideration. Now, I'm not saying that we must do away with fast medicine, of course not. When this patient first presented to us many months ago with a laryngeal tumor and an upper airway obstruction, fast medicine allowed us to cut the surgical cricothyroidotomy that saved her life. However, months later, once her tracheostomy had been created and she kept on returning to us with blocked tracheostomies, it was slow medicine that helped us to explain to her how to use soap and water to really wash it well at home, and actually help us to advocate to the ENTs for a better, wider tracheostomy that was less likely to block. I like to think of the fast and the slow as interdependent pairs. This phrase is coined by the Human Dynamic Systems Institute, and interdependent pairs are things that you can't really have at the same time, but sort of complement each other. So think quality and quantity. Quantity, the average waiting time in my emergency department for a stable patient is 2 days. 2 days. Sometimes we need to work fast. We need to push the queue. You need to use your type 1 thinking and just get the patients going. But sometimes you need quality and you need to move a little bit slower. So, how can we introduce a little bit of slow into the fast emergency medicine? The same way you think of flow of your patients through the emergency department, we all know there's in factors, through factors, and out factors. I like to think of it as moving through a shift as well, with in factors, through, and out. In, for me, speaks to how you actually arrive on your shift. Now, similar to David Carr, I'm not going to tell you to meditate or sleep 8 hours between shifts or eat well. You know what works for you and you know what you need to do. I'm just going to give 2 examples. When I was on my honeymoon, answering a bunch of messages about work, I realized that this was not working for me. I now have 2 phones. I have 2 numbers, and I do not have my work email on my personal phone. My colleague asks that I don't send work-related messages before the shift starts in the morning. He says he wants to take some time to have breakfast, take his kids to school, and if there's no massive emergency, he can worry about work when he gets there. Through factors. We all know, and many of us do practice, that death pause after a failed resuscitation. That in itself has been shown to reduce burnout and actually improve our cognitive loads as we go on to the next case. On day 1, Dr. Lawson spoke about trauma-informed care. Trauma-informed care, she said, asks not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. Trauma-informed care is giving patients agency and autonomy. It's taking time to empathize with them, to ask their stories, and to really walk a road with them that encourages them no matter what kind of trauma they've gone through. The reflective physician, I love this description, is able to focus, fully engaged with his or her patients, and aware of his or her feelings and behaviors at all times. Sometimes you just need to stop. I like to do this while I wash my hands. I do not sing happy birthday for 30 seconds. I stop. I take a deep breath. I observe. Am I feeling tension? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? How am I feeling? And I plan my next step. There might be 12 of those steps, and you don't always know what's the best one. But if you can plan your next step at that point, it usually helps you to move on a bit better. And finally, out. Brene Brown has a fantastic podcast where she talks about the locking system on the Thames. She talks about ships. So if a ship needs to get from a higher level to a lower level or vice versa, it enters into a thing called a lock. Water then flows in or flows out and brings the ship back up to the level that it sort of needs to be at. My big take home from that is that it takes what it takes. You cannot rush the water flowing in. You cannot rush how those ships move up and down. And that for me is me at the end of a long day at work. Somebody told me a story this week about someone who parked their car a block away from home and used the walk home to rest and recharge. For me, it's walking my dogs. It takes what it takes. I don't know if you know the most commonly used noun in the English language. Kaushila spoke about language earlier. The most commonly used noun in the English language is time. There's lots of different definitions of time. We talk about the time, right? Greenwich Mean Time is the time. Right now, the time is the time that I'm giving this talk. I had a chat to a friend of mine recently about African time. And I asked her, what does African time mean to you? And she said, African time is when I go to my family for lunch. We're supposed to eat lunch at 1 o'clock. But if we only eat lunch at 3 o'clock, then it takes what it takes. And if there's one person there who said, I've got somewhere else to be at 3 o'clock, and they are trying to put their own agenda and their own time above that of the community, then that is not in keeping with the idea of African time. It takes what it takes. And so I'm going to leave you with the words of one of my favorite songs that also comes from ancient scripture, to say that to everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time for quality, a time for quantity, a time to be fast, and a time to be slow.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks so much. So this one's a really good talk, because I think everybody can relate to this topic as an emergency physician. So I'm really curious to hear comments from the crowd. The one thing I will say is that this thing is existential if we think not. Now I think I'm 20 or 22 years in practice, and it's just impossible to do it the same way. I remember in internship and residency, you could just do shift after shift after shift, and you just kept going. And now I do one shift and I feel like I need a week to recover from this. How can I keep going? So even if you don't think of it for your patients, for your life as you evolve, inevitably, we are not in one of the specialties where the pace can be kept forever. At some point, you must begin to shift and think about how you're going to manage your life. So given what we've just heard from Sian, I'd really love to hear comments and questions for her. We've got 7 minutes. We can take a question or two or comments about what we've just heard. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kirsten. As of now, I'm an anesthesiology specialist in Germany, but I'm an emergency trained doctor in the Netherlands. So looking at the statistics, what you taught about burnout for emergency medicine, that's not a good thing for me, but now I'm an anesthesiologist and it has the highest suicide rate among the specialists, so I'm kind of screwed. Yes, but I took notice and reflected on my own working hours and reduced heavily on my hours, and it works well for me. But I've noticed a lot of peer pressure and a lot of funny comments now and then. Lately, I switched jobs, and a little elderly colleague who's about to retire asked me, so how many hours do you work? Do you full time? I'm like, as of now, 56%. And she's like, what do you do the rest of your time? I'm like, well, I got a lovely life. And it kind of caught me off guard. And I was wondering, have you also experienced peer pressure, the pressure just to keep pushing? And why are you taking this little time out? Why are you taking maybe 2 minutes more, a lunch break? And how are you dealing with that?
So firstly, I just wanted to say I'm very jealous that you are in a system where you have that, and I know we speak to so many people from so many different systems. Unfortunately, in the system that I'm in currently, you have a set number of hours that you work, and to try and stop or work with that, there's not a lot of give within the system. So well done. That is amazing. I really hope that people who are in similar systems to yours that can actually do that really do think about how you want your job and how you want your career and how you want your life to look at. I'm not in that situation at the moment, and so I've had to look at other things to try and make it better. I can't say much about peer pressure. What I will say is that probably my hardest driver is myself. So the hardest person to actually talk to about actually slowing down and setting boundaries is myself. And I think that's probably been far harder for me than, yes, obviously you worry, am I pulling my weight? Am I doing enough? Am I doing enough for the system that is so broken and there's so many sick patients? And, am I living up to my calling? I mean, there's so much of that. But I would say the biggest person to talk through is yourself. And what's been really helpful for me has been friends, mentors, my family, coaching, and my psychologist. Those have been the most helpful things in working through that. So, thank you.
Other questions?
Hi, my name is Nuran. I'm a nurse in South Germany and working in 2 different emergency departments, like just for pediatrics and for adults. And my question to you is, how did you have rituals and some kind of stuff at your workplace with your own team? Because my biggest struggle, especially in the adult emergency department, I'm a very positive person, and you experience the positivity can sometimes take the other ones with you and be also positive, but the stress and the workload and the traumas you also experience yourself at the emergency department also can sometimes bring people with a very bad negative energy, and it's normal, not judgment here, influence the whole team, and it's pretty hard sometimes to accept that this negativity also influence our work and also our sorry, pardon my bad English, our working. It's we are. I think, in my opinion, we make a better work and treat our patients also sometimes maybe not that good when the whole team is in that bad state. It's normal in the emergency department, but did you have tools or rituals or some kind of stuff to sometimes change that and also ground your team and ground the people who are working there to challenge that?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I could honestly talk for hours, and I think so many of us will have so many ideas and different things. What I will say is the idea for this talk actually came out of more of looking at it from an educational perspective. And the one thing that we try to protect in our team, and it is very difficult because we are so busy and there's a lot going on, and if somebody collapses next to you, but the things that we have tried to protect at all odds have been our getting together for things that are educational, but also that bring the team together. So at least once a week, the entire team together, and once a day, everyone that's on shift together in one place, and trying to protect that, which is not easy, but I think that's something that we don't always get right, but something that I found helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Is the final speaker here? Okay. All right. Any final comments on some of the things we've discussed? I think, to summarize, we've heard a couple of different speakers. We've heard from our colleague in Libya who's setting up a pre-hospital care system after conflict. And then we heard also from our colleague from Sri Lanka who's talking about decolonizing medicine, specifically from her perspective of simulation education. And finally, Sian is talking about life in the slow lane. Different perspectives of emergency medicine from all over the world. I think the important thing that we all need to take away from this is that our specialty comes in different flavors. It looks different everywhere. But more importantly, we're doing it very well on our own sometimes, but maybe as doctors, we're not so good about advocacy and system change because you're so focused on this patient. Many of the things we've talked about today require you to pull in your stakeholders, key opinion leaders, the politicians you don't want to talk to. You need to go to speak to people who make decisions that impact you. Our specialty is not going to change in terms of the way our lives and our shifts run from individual changes over a system. We have to tackle it from on high, and we have to be ready to engage them in that way. So without further ado, I think I'll close the session here if there's nothing else. And we want to thank you all for your attention and for attending. Thank you so much. And there's Global EM2 starting in the afternoon.